Most people think wars are fought on battlefields, but some of the biggest consequences happen somewhere else. In gas stations, in grocery stores, in stock markets. Because when a major conflict erupts in the Middle East, the effects don't stay there. They ripple through the entire global economy. Oil prices spike, shipping routes freeze, markets panic, and suddenly the cost of everyday life starts rising. So how could the war in Iran affect the world economy? The answer begins with a narrow strip of water most people have never heard of. The conflict involving Iran is not just a geopolitical crisis. It's also an economic shock. Financial markets react almost immediately to instability in the region, because the Middle East sits at the center of the world's energy system. When tensions escalate there, the entire global supply chain feels it. And the biggest risk comes from one location: the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important shipping routes on Earth. At its narrowest point, it's only about 21 miles wide. But through this small waterway flows roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. Every day, millions of barrels of oil pass through this corridor on massive tankers. If conflict disrupts this route, energy markets react instantly. And that's exactly what has been happening. Oil prices have surged, and analysts warn the disruption could become the largest oil supply shock in history. When energy supply becomes uncertain, the entire world economy feels the pressure. Oil isn't just about gasoline. It powers transportation, shipping, manufacturing, and agriculture. When oil prices spike, businesses everywhere face higher costs. And those costs get passed on to consumers. Flights become more expensive. Food prices rise. Shipping costs increase. Since the conflict began, oil prices have already surged past $100 per barrel, triggering fears of the biggest energy shock since the oil crises of the 1970s. If the conflict continues to disrupt supply, economists warn it could push inflation higher around the world. In other words, the impact of this war could show up directly in your wallet. But energy isn't the only risk. War also disrupts global trade. Shipping companies become hesitant to send vessels through conflict zones. Insurance costs rise. Cargo routes are delayed or rerouted. And when global trade slows, supply chains start breaking down. Factories receive materials later. Retailers receive products slower. And shortages begin appearing across industries. Even small disruptions in trade can ripple through international markets. And when the world economy depends on complex global supply chains, those disruptions spread quickly. Wars also create uncertainty, and financial markets hate uncertainty. When investors don't know what will happen next, they often pull money out of risky assets. Stocks can fall, oil companies and energy firms may surge, currencies fluctuate. Investors begin searching for safe places to store their wealth. Gold often rises, government bonds become more attractive, and volatility spreads across markets. The longer the conflict lasts, the more unpredictable the economic consequences become. One of the biggest risks from a prolonged conflict is inflation. If oil supply falls while demand remains high, energy prices rise. Higher energy prices increase production costs for nearly every industry. That creates a chain reaction. Transportation costs rise. Food production becomes more expensive. Electricity prices climb, and consumers around the world feel the impact. Some analysts warn that if disruptions continue, the conflict could even push parts of the global economy toward recession. Wars reshape more than borders. They reshape economies. A conflict thousands of miles away can influence the price of gasoline, the cost of groceries, the stability of financial markets. Because in today's interconnected world, energy, trade, and finance are tightly linked. The Iran war is still unfolding, and its ultimate impact will depend on how long it lasts and how far it spreads. But one thing is certain. In the modern global economy, even distant conflicts can shape the financial future of millions of people around the world.